And we're live. All right.
Hello, everybody. How is life? Super happy to be here. March 2nd, another live stream from kubefirst. My name is Frederick Harper. I am a principal developer advocate. Sorry, just had an issue here, and that's a good start for a live stream. So yeah, just had a small issue. That's a good intro, and I'm back. So yeah, I was just saying, my name is Frederick Harper. I'm a principal developer advocate at kubefirst, and I'm not alone here. So gentlemen, if you want to introduce yourself, please go.
Why don't you start first this time, Jared? Go ahead.
All right, I'm quick anyways. Hey, my name's Jared Edwards, one of the co-founders of kubefirst, and I'm here to talk about some Argo Workflows with
John Dietz. I'm the other co-founder at kubefirst, and yeah, we're excited today to talk about Argo Workflows, really awesome workflow engine, Kubernetes-native, and how to integrate it with two of the most popular Git providers in GitHub and GitLab. So excited to show you a little bit of our preview of our demo ground as well today. Today we'll be demoing on a preview of our upcoming 2.0 release that's going to showcase what it looks like to run the kubefirst platform on the new Civo cloud with both GitHub and GitLab. So excited to show you around.
So actually, you know what? John basically told mostly everything I had to do, I had to say for the live stream. So it's fine. It's fine. Good job, John. So yeah, actually, you already got introduced about what we're going to talk today. But before we jump in the main topic, before we jump in the cool things that we all like, the demos, for those of you that are new to kubefirst, we are a free open source platform where we call ourselves an instant GitOps platform, because, you know, if you're new to Kubernetes, even if you're using Kubernetes, it's not always easy. It's difficult. There is many moving pieces, and obviously deploying a cluster, you can do it. It's a command line. It's working, but like you have a Kubernetes cluster after that. Like nothing is running yet, nothing is configured yet. So what we do, we tackle the complexity of installing like different CNCF, the best tools out there, open source also, to make your life easier, to have a full-fledged configure, working, ready for production clusters. And we respect the GitOps standard. We respect how GitOps is working. So at the end of the day, yes, you use kubefirst to install, to deploy your cluster, but there's that magical repo that we have called GitOps, where this is the power of the entire platform. This is where the magic happens. And after you use kubefirst to deploy your cluster, you can basically make it your own. You can install whatever else you want. You can change some of the application you install. You can configure it as much as you like to make it yours to run your own application or whatever you want to run on Kubernetes. So if you want to try it, you can go, it's on GitHub, and you go to github.com/kubefirst/kubefirst, because the organization is the same name as the product. You go there, everything is there to help you. But if you have any issues, or you want to understand how it's working behind the hood, or you want a step-by-step guides, you can go in the documentation. It's at docs.kubefirst.io. And if for whatever reasons you have an issue, you have a question, something is not working, you think you found a bug, come join us on the Slack community at kubefirst.io/Slack. It's a community. We have the Helping Hands channels. This is where you can ask any question. You can tell us what you like about the platform, what you don't like about the platform, if there's such a thing. But it's the place to go. You can even just come to say hi and discuss about different topic, or just share like the cool tools you're using when you're deploying Kubernetes cluster, or whatever makes sense for you. We are there to chat with people, but foremost, we're here to help you with anything and everything kubefirst. On that note, I'm going to leave the mic to John, and he's going to introduce you about Argo Workflows and what the hell is that?
Thanks so much, Fred. Yeah, so Argo Workflows is a technology that we've been using for maybe, I don't know, the last 2.5, 3 years or so on the platform. It's been a great engine for us. It's a Kubernetes-native workflow engine. So I know that there's a lot of CI and workflow tools that run in Kubernetes, but Workflows was built for Kubernetes, which is what we mean by Kubernetes native. That Kubernetes native workflow engine, because it was built for Kubernetes, you get the power of all of the controls of Kubernetes RBAC and how you're controlling your secrets and what has access to those secrets, and all of that type of stuff just comes natively available by using Argo Workflows. So why would you use Argo Workflows? Well, first of all, it's open source, it's free, it's CNCF, it has great stability, great project, great community, and you can use it for a lot of different purposes. On the kubefirst platform, we happen to use it for GitOps CI workflows. So when you're doing GitOps for application delivery, you have to still do things as part of a CI half of your pipeline. It's you have to build a container, you have to package an application in a Helm chart, you have to do things to bundle up your application, and then you have to set that desired state for your GitOps. And we leverage Argo Workflows for the continuous integration of doing those builds, packaging it up, and defining the desired state in that GitOps repository. But there's a lot of other use cases for Argo Workflows. Machine learning, certainly you have a whole bunch of operations, and you have to be able to span those out and run them as DAGs and pull it all back together to aggregate it all. Very similar to the machine learning workflow. You have maybe you have like a data warehouse ecosystem, and you have to be able to constantly be doing ETL operations in order to get data out of your warehouse and formatted to the specific needs of your consumers. All of these are great purposes for Argo Workflows, and it's a very, very scalable and architecturally sound Kubernetes native implementation for workflow executions, regardless of which one of those categories you would want to use it for. However, today we're mostly going to be focusing on continuous integration. Because when, Fred, if we could flip to the next slide, when you're doing continuous integration, really what you're talking about is that touch point between your Git provider and the pipeline. So your developers are working in their Git provider, and the two of the most common Git providers in the space is GitHub and GitLab. They're very feature similar platforms. They both have a SaaS ecosystem. GitLab has a really nice self-hosted server implementation with Omnibus or on Kubernetes. GitHub on Enterprise also has those same capabilities. They both have issue management. They both have a space where you can store your application repositories, and they both have their own native CI ecosystem. So if you're a GitHub shop, it's going to be very tempting to leverage GitHub Actions in your GitHub code base. It makes a lot of sense. There's a nice tight correlation between the automation that runs as a reaction to things that are happening in your Git repository and needing to have results from a lint or from a unit test or from setting your desired state for an environment promotion in a GitOps ecosystem or whatever. And GitHub at github.com, generally speaking, it's very easy and seamless to leverage GitHub Actions to power that automation and get results of your automated activities back into your GitHub Git provider. Very similarly, in the GitLab space at gitlab.com or in your self-hosted GitLab, you're going to be leveraging GitLab runners with a lot of regularity if you're using the default Git provider's automation space. And GitLab Runner is also a very powerful, very capable tool. It is seamlessly integrated with the GitLab server that it needs to connect to and that it needs to react to when pull requests are opened or when pull requests are merged or when a main branch gets touched or whatever your conditions are to kicking off a CI job. So what we're going to do today is show you the power of what happens when you take this very, very powerful Kubernetes-oriented Argo Workflows ecosystem and integrate it with these popular Git provider-oriented automation technologies like GitHub Actions and GitLab Runner so that you can get a full, rich developer ecosystem where the developer is getting feedback from the system, even though they're leveraging an automation layer that really doesn't know much about GitHub or GitLab. It's just a workflow engine, but we have some neat ways to integrate the two together that we were going to show you today. So at that point, I think we're ready for demo, unless I'm getting anything.
So there is no favorite today. Like we're gonna talk about GitHub and GitLab.
That's right.
So there is something for everyone. So without further ado, let's go with Jared and his demo.
All right. So John, where are we starting?
Let's start off by going just to so right here we're on the new screen of the kubefirst console application. Want to call that out. This is a screen that replaces the old screen for our older kubefirst friends. Our console application has received a bit of a facelift, and it may not look recognizable. So wanted to call that out real quick before we jump in. This is going to be this is going to be what our console screen looks like at the conclusion of a kubefirst installation. It'll drop you on this nice page, and you can use this page in order to get to all the common applications that you would typically want to jump to in order to check out the kubefirst platform. But Jared, to answer your question, let's jump into Argo Workflows first and just do a sample execution of, not tied to any Git providers or anything, just what does it look like to run an Argo workflow?
All right. So I'm going to do this in the UI just to keep it very simple for this initial part. We're going to just do the full workflow. And this is just an example workflow that's copied directly from the Argo Workflows repository in their examples folder. It's just their hello world. It's just very straightforward on what an Argo workflow consists of. It's kind workflow, which is one of the CRDs for executing this job. And then we have this small template. This one doesn't have a whole lot going on, but at the end of the day, you can pass parameters, inputs, artifacts, all kinds of things to this container image that's going to run and do whatever the work is that you have asked it to do. So if I wanted to execute this workflow, I'm just going to click the create button here, and we're going to see Argo drops straight into the UI and shows what it looks like to have a workflow running. The right side of the screen here is going to have a bunch of metadata about the execution. It's a little quiet because this is just a simple example, but it tells you about the image that was running the command, the args, environment variables if they're present, any of those inputs and outputs that I did mention, and then you can check out the logs, which just is we'll say hello kubefirst.
Very cool, very cool. So that spec, if you could bring that that spec up real quick again of the workflow that we submitted.
Yeah.
So the templates here in this spec are representative of steps that you can execute, and you can have as many of these steps as you want. This particular example that we're working through here just has a single step where we're invoking whale say. Now, Jared, could you show us in the metaphor application, what it looks like when we chain together a whole bunch of those steps to represent something more indicative of something you would do in a CI pipeline like publish.
Yeah, we can do that. I just grabbed this if it was easier to talk through on the examples page. They have like a steps one, but let me go to the metaphor application really quick, and we'll use that. In our new GitLab UI, metaphor, Argo directory, and I like GitLab's web IDE better, so I'm going to drop in here to explore. Publish. All right.
Yeah, just talk us through these steps and how this is organized a little bit.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, this is the workflow that gets invoked via the Git provider. So this one is going to be invoked through this GitLab CI YAML in the root of the application repository. I'll look at that file here in just a minute. But the workflow in the context of being able to publish a container for us at kubefirst is basically these steps. We're going to actually go ahead and publish that container, and we're using a CWFT, which is just short for cluster workflow template called BuildKit, and we're going to have that publish the container. And then additionally, we have a few more steps that we need to do. We need to use the application source code so that we can get the initial chart version, which is the Helm chart that's in the environment now, or will be in the environment. We're going to set that to have a release candidate tag on it, which is going to be the short SHA from the commit that just came in to trigger this job. And then we're going to publish a Helm chart as an RC as well. That's going to give you the opportunity to explore your new change set that you just introduced to the code base in the live development environment.
Very cool. And now we could, if we wanted to, we could just like take this workflow and send it to Argo Workflows. However, we have an opportunity with the integrations that we've put together with GitLab to leverage GitLab Runner in order to invoke that Argo workflow. Can you show us a little bit of that?
Sure, as long as I understood the question, but that's okay.
GitLab CI basically.
Oh yeah, okay. So not where I was going. Thank you for the course correction. So we'll drop into that GitLab CI YAML that we mentioned prior. It's got this. So GitLab CI works a little bit different than GitHub. They've got this stages block, and these are basically the order of operations that you want for different jobs that can be invoked. You can also add branch-based jobs and other things, but we can cover that at another time if folks have questions. This publish job that we were looking at in the previous tab is representative of this Argo submit command right here. So when we want our GitLab CI runner to invoke the publish job for us, these are the parameters that are required for us to pass along to that job so that it can successfully run and hydrates that workflow template with all of the values that we get from the native GitLab CI ecosystem.
That's very cool. So let's see that in action. Can we, looks like this publish job is set up to react to the main branch. So can you make a change to the main branch and show what that experience looks like in Argo Workflows and then in GitLab itself?
Yeah, so we will go ahead and just drop on the README here and make a white space change. And hit the main branch, which is going to lead me in the GitLab UI over to this nice CI/CD section in the left gutter with the pipelines page. And we'll see that this pipeline is kicked off here. So this is the GitLab view that your developers would likely be enjoying as they get to watch their CI. I'll click on this link and then hop directly into the Argo Workflows UI to see the same job running behind the scenes. And so when we look at our list of workflows that are running, we can see that the metaphor front end publish job came in. And so it's going to run through this series of steps that we can talk about. It's a little more exciting if I go to one that's already run to keep talking. So I'll drop over here for a quick second. And this is the full output of a publish job. And I think the most notable thing that the Argo Workflow UI gives you are all these green checkboxes, which is good. It means the jobs ran successfully. But then additionally, it gives you this nice metadata about any artifacts that were collected along the way for the CI job to run and execute successfully.
Very cool. And what does that look like in the GitLab user interface when a job is running?
Yeah, so great question. We'll see that this is still running, and just for the sake of the same thing you'll be seeing. So you can see there's a Docker build happening right now. And if we go into that GitLab UI, we have the same exact commands executed, or same exact step executing here. We're currently still building the image for this application. If we scroll up to the top, we can see that our Argo submit command was the last thing to happen. And then these are all the parameters that were hydrated through the native environment variables that were given to us in the GitLab CI.
Right on. And this is really like the point of like showing the power of this integration. Like right now we're in GitLab.com. This is, if you're a GitLab shop, this is your developer's home. This is your platform engineering team's home. When they merge pull requests, when they open pull requests, when they whatever the task is that they're doing in their day-to-day activity, interacting with their application code base or their GitOps code base, like this is where the action's happening. This is home base. And the ability to have, so Argo Workflows doesn't require an integration with GitLab in order to run jobs for GitLab. The problem is the feedback. You have to have, in our opinion, it's very valuable to have feedback that goes back to the developer's home base in their native form. You could, on the other hand, implement Argo Events. Argo Events is another CNCF project. It's also very good. It's also open source. It's also free. And it works really well. And you can set up Argo Events so that when a main branch gets touched, it will fire a webhook to Argo Events, and Argo Events will wake up and say, hey, let's run a workflow as a result of this activity. But you don't get that feedback back into the developer's home space the same way that you do when you have an integration between the Git provider and the Argo Workflows ecosystem. So Jared,
I was going to mention one more thing on this. Now that we have the next step of this job executing, the next workflow template rather. So a really neat feature about this feedback that John's referring to also is that we mentioned that each of these green checkboxes is actually its own ephemeral container. So it spins up just for this small piece of work. And when we drop back into the GitLab UI, we can see that we've got these new multicolor outputs. And so each one of these container steps on the actual Argo workflow view get represented as a different color log output on the GitLab side. So it gives you a clear way to help you debug also when you are trying to figure out, hey, where in the workflow did this happen? It's pretty easy to count the colors and correlate what step may have had a problem, and then get that feedback of where you should go look for that bug that you're trying to find.
Yeah, really cool call out. And because these steps can be so small and atomic in their scope, you're able to, when a particular part of your workflow requires you to have access to a very sensitive secret, like your password to Docker Hub or whatever it might be, it's nice to be able to control that, like just this tiny bit of the workflow, just this one little container gets access to that secret and nothing else does. If you were to leverage only GitHub Actions or only GitLab Runner, you can still set up secrets, but those secrets are exposed in a way where they're available to the entire job's execution, which if you're using third-party tools, and we all know that CI ecosystems are an attack vector for bad actors, that's the type of over-permissive use of secrets that we're trying to avoid by buying into Argo Workflows and setting them up with the tighter controls around secret use. So really cool use case there. Jared, the one last thing that I was hoping that we could show on the GitLab stack over here is just how it is that we integrated and configured the GitLab Runner so that it can react to the GitLab.com jobs that are being invoked.
Yeah, another thing while I'm making my way over to the GitOps repository on the CI jobs that we're running, we do self-host our runners, so they are running in our infrastructure in our cloud. We're not leveraging any of the cloud ecosystems jobs, so that is a nice to have for some folks.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, especially if you have sensitive content in your CI pipelines or in your data warehousing pipelines or whatever it is. It's always good to have that those secrets kept in-house. Certainly better than keeping them in the SaaS ecosystem. And there are also limits in terms of how many hours of CI time you get for free on GitHub, GitLab. But when you're on self-hosted runners, those limits don't apply. So there's a lot of advantage to hosting your own runners, whether it's GitLab or GitHub.
Yeah. All right, so I made my way over to the GitOps repository. We're in a registry directory here that basically is all of the Kubernetes assets responsible for this kubefirst.com cluster that I have up and running for this demo. If we go into the GitLab components folder, we just have an Argo CD application kind here that's configured to be set up to these repositories in my GitLab group. The way that authenticates, though, is you see here this line 29, there's a GitLab Runner secret, and if we go just to the file right next door to this one in this directory, we have this external secret. And basically, when we provision, or when at the time that HashiCorp Vault is available in the cluster, we hydrate it with all of the secrets that the platform is going to need to execute. So that is inclusive of these GitLab Runner tokens, and the GitLab Runner pod gets this registration token so that when it checks in with GitLab.com, there's a secure way for it to know that this is the correct repositories to connect to, and it's going to pick up the jobs only for your groups.
Pretty straightforward. Looks pretty easy. Thank you for that, Jared. I think at this point we're ready to show the feature paired equivalent. We're going to go a little bit more. We're going to go a little bit more swiftly on the GitHub side of the house, so that we're not showing you every last detail the same way. But Fred, if you could switch it over to my screen at this point. So this is
that's my part. I have nothing against GitLab, but I'm a GitHub person. So like, show me the money. Show me how it's working.
You got it, buddy. So
now Fred's listening.
This is again our new console app. This was the result of my Civo GitHub flavor of an installation that's coming out in the new 2.0 kubefirst. And let's dive in first to Argo CD. Here we can see, if I bring up GitHub, we have our runner components here, and there's a runner deployment, and it is configured with just a little bit of information. So it's a SummerWin action runner dinned image type. This was a third-party image. GitHub just recently adopted that image. So this is now a native part of the GitHub ecosystem. And the runner, Actions Runner controller, this is the self-hosted runner that's running in the Kubernetes cluster that we install kubefirst to, and those components, it's just the application. So this doesn't have the same external secret paradigm that the GitLab one does, but just like the GitLab ecosystem works, the GitHub ecosystem works the same way. It's a runner that's running in your Kubernetes cluster. Nothing is invoking anything to it. Instead, it is pulling the Git provider server, checking for jobs that need to be executed based on however you have it configured and what you want it to watch. And when there's a job to execute, it'll kick that job off. In much the same way, when you do a kubefirst install against GitHub, you're going to get a metaphor repository. And unlike what Jared was showing us with .gitlab CI.yaml, GitHub works just slightly different with GitHub Actions. And GitHub Actions, basically, you have an opportunity to establish jobs, just like you do in .gitlab. And all we're doing in those jobs is basically getting to this point where we can do a Argo submit of a particular job that we have in the application repository to conduct an operation like a publish or a deployment or a software version release. So I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like when those two are integrated. I won't dive into all the same details because they're basically identical details, but if I just open up a README and make a simple white space change to the main branch, then the action runner controller that's running in my Kubernetes cluster is going to poll the server, see if there are any jobs to kick off. It's going to recognize that there are. So up here in actions, we'll see that a job has kicked off. This particular pipeline has a handful of jobs that are going to execute in sequence, just like we had set up in GitLab. And all this stuff that we're showing you here, this isn't like months of, well, technically it is, but we haven't spent a whole bunch of time setting this up for this demo or anything. Everything that we're showing you here, including the Metaphor application repository, the CI ecosystem, all the jobs that you need to be able to publish containers, publish Helm charts, do GitOps delivery to dev stage prod, it all comes for free out of the box with no touching. Like you have to install kubefirst, and then you get all this amazing stuff, and it's all automated and working together with HashiCorp Vault, with secrets, with all this kind of stuff integrated. It's a really nice platform. But anyway, when you're running this in GitHub ecosystem, it's very much the same way that Jared described it. So we have in Argo Workflows, we're going to have a workflow that's executing. That execution, just like Jared was describing, it's going to have a handful of output. I'm going to have to wait a second for that to come back. And then over here, this output's going to look the same way. I'll fast forward the clock a little bit and go back in time. Can I do that? Let's go back in time and look at a already executed job, so that you can see what it looks like once it's complete, so that we're not all staring at a Docker build execution. But just like on the GitLab variation in GitHub, you get the nice output from Argo Workflows. You get the color changing techniques that Argo Workflows has implemented when you're jumping between containers. And you get that feedback back in your developer's home base of GitHub, which is where they want to be. So if you're trying to keep your developer team happy, if maybe you're a platform engineer and you're building up a internal developer platform, our advice to you is that your developers want to be where they want to be, and it's not worth fighting them for it. So integrate their tools in their home base with the tools that you need as a platform team, or the tools that you need as a security team, to have those tight controls over what has access to what secrets and how does it all work, but provide your developers with the convenience and surfacing those CI jobs back into their Git provider ecosystem.
I cannot agree more with that. Like, do whatever your developers want you to do.
They're gonna win one way or another.
It's the secret to being successful as a company.
That's right. That's right. So that's all we wanted to show about GitHub. Fred, if you want to take the screen back.
Yeah, so good job, good demo, super interesting. And the cool thing with that is that you get everything we've shown you, as John said, you have it on kubefirst. And if you were with us in the last live stream, and I think the other one before, we basically touched base about the fact that we are integrating Civo to kubefirst right now, and it's not released yet. Soon, but it's coming. But the good news, though, is that if you want to try it right now, you can do it. So you can replicate what we've just shown you using kubefirst on Civo, and you're going to need, though, to use the main branch. So you have the code there, but it's basically like you would do. You clone the GitHub repository, you do the configuration you need to do, which is like basically adding the token. So things will be available in the documentation soon. And instead of running the kubefirst command line, because again, as I said, it's not released, you need to use Go and run directly the command. So Go run dot would basically mean that Go is going to build the application, run the application within the actual directory you're in. And the Civo create is the command you're going to get with the kubefirst command line, the kubefirst CLI, once we're going to release that version to the public. But if you want to try it and you're missing information, it's not working, you have questions, comment, again, I'm repeating myself, but this is where I spend some of my time day to day. Join us in the Slack community. We are there to answer your question and to get the feedback. But again, it's for those of you that are a little bit adventurous because it's not released yet, but we're really close. I need to say that like it felt like it's production ready, but I don't want to say. I just said it out loud, but it's just not officially released yet. So not putting a little bit of pressure on the engineering team, but like we're so close. It's getting there. We're super excited about their integration. Anything you want to add about either Argo Workflows or the Civo integration?
I think you nailed it, buddy.
Yeah.
And if Fred says put it in production, let's put it in production. Let's do it.
Listen to the developers.
Let's do that. So as was shown you during the live stream, everything is on GitHub. So you go on github.com/kubefirst/kubefirst, and every magic about kubefirst is there. It's open source. Documentation, as a reminder, is on docs.kubefirst.io. Again, I need to say, join the Slack, come have fun with us, and even if you don't use kubefirst, just come hang out with us and talk about cloud native stuff and Kubernetes, whether it's good thing or you just need to vent about the latest cluster that you had issue with. Like, come talk with us. We're there to have that discussion with you. And gentlemen, you know it. I think it's now part of the live stream have a really bad developer joke. So why do most Java developers wear glasses?
I just read this one.
Fred.
You just read it because they don't see sharp. That is so bad that it's maybe good. So on that note, I wish everyone a good rest of the day. If you have any question, if you watch the recording of the video and you have any question in the future, it doesn't stop after the live stream. Again, we're on Slack, we're on Twitter, we are on LinkedIn too. So just ask us any question about what we've talked about. And on that note, I wish everybody a good day and see you in 2 weeks for the next live stream.
See you there.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.